Okay, let's unpack this. This fundamental human thing, the drive to have an impact,
Right.
to shape things around us.
Yeah, you see it everywhere.
Absolutely. From like big global politics down to just figuring out a Monday meeting. And what's interesting is, even when you feel powerless, you're still kind of in that game.
You are. That need for agency, some control, it's wired in. It's not always about dominating people, though.
Right, not necessarily. It's more basic, that drive to influence your own life.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're really looking deep at power, persuasion, what Robert Greene calls seduction, human nature itself, and that whole journey to mastery.
And we're doing it through the lens of his conversation on The Diary of a CEO.
That's the source material, excerpts from that YouTube interview.
Yeah.
It gives us a direct line to his thinking.
Yeah, it's straight from him.
So our mission here, basically, we pull out the key takeaways, the stuff you can actually use to understand interactions better, reach your goals, and just navigate life, which, let's face it, can get pretty complex.
Think of it as a shortcut, maybe? Getting a handle on these big human topics.
Exactly, a shortcut. So Greene's mind goes in so many directions. Where do we even start making sense of it all?
Well, I think you have to start with what shaped him, right? His background.
Yeah.
Growing up in L.A., middle-class family. Sounds pretty normal on the surface.
Mm-hmm. But he talks about being left alone a lot.
Right. And how books really shaped him because of that.
And he mentions, experimenting with drugs in high school, college. It paints a picture of someone actively seeking things out, different experiences.
Definitely. And that time observing people, seeing the masks they wear, questioning what's really driving them, that seems foundational.
You can see the seeds there for what came later.
Absolutely. It set the stage for looking into those hidden dynamics.
And then there's that string of jobs. I mean, it's quite a list. Construction,
Detective agency, tour guide.
teaching English in Spain. It seems kind of all over the place.
I mean, he calls it a hunger for weird experiences. And if you think about it, each job was like a different window onto human nature, right? Seeing people in different situations under pressure.
Like collecting data without realizing it.
Sort of, yeah. Raw material for later.
Okay, then comes Italy. This key moment. He's there, meets a book packager.
And boom! All these observations about power, especially in Hollywood, just come tumbling out. He says vomiting, which is pretty intense.
It really gives you a sense of it being pent up.
And the big realization he had there was key. The surface changes, no more wigs like Louis XIV.
Right.
But the core games, the manipulations, they're timeless. Same stuff happening with modern CEOs.
That comparison makes it really click. Human nature doesn't change that fast.
Exactly.
So that leads him back to L.A., borrows money from his parents. Kind of a get-rich-or-die-trying moment, he says.
Yeah, high stakes.
To write the treatment for the 48 Laws of Power. Must have been quite a leap of faith.
Absolutely. That kind of pressure, feeling like you have to make it work, that can be a huge motivator. Real creativity can come from that.
Okay, so the 48 Laws of Power, it just takes off, becomes this global thing.
Huge. Over 2 million copies just in the U.S. And what's wild is sales are actually accelerating now.
Years later. That's incredible.
It really shows how relevant those themes still feel to people. And it wasn't like a big media push at first.
Well,
no, it became this cult thing, mostly through word of mouth.
Interesting. But there were moments that helped it along.
Oh, for sure. Like it got mentioned on that reality show, The Contender.
Okay.
And then the hip-hop community really embraced it. That was massive. Jay-Z quoting it in Playboy was apparently the first big one.
Wow.
Then 50 Cent, Drake, that took it to a whole new audience.
You can see how that would amplify it. So Greene himself, how does he feel about the book now? This sounds like his perspective has shifted a bit.
Yeah, it's evolved. He aimed for something timeless from the start. He gets the dark side aspect people talk about.
Right. Some of those laws are pretty ruthless.
They are. But he stands by them as truths about how power often works, especially in business and just human nature. He even wrote Mastery partly to kind of balance it out, address potential misinterpretations.
So acknowledging the complexities, not just saying, go be Machiavellian.
Exactly. It's more about understanding the game, whether you play it that way or not. It's awareness.
Okay, let's really dig into that core idea then. Power.
Yeah.
What is it, according to Greene? He shifts it away from just, like, political control.
Yeah, that's key. He sees it as much more personal. A feeling, an emotion. even a need, a human desire.
So it's internal as much as external.
Very much so. He takes it out of just governments and institutions and puts it right into your daily life, your individual experience.
And the absolute core of it, he says, is understanding and controlling yourself.
Yes. That's such a crucial takeaway for you listening. Self-mastery first. If you can't manage your own reactions, your own emotions.
How can you possibly navigate the outside world effectively?
Precisely. Self-awareness, self-regulation. That's the foundation.
He uses really relatable examples, like that feeling of control, or maybe lack of control, with your family, your spouse, your boss, your team.
We all know that feeling.
And he references that idea, I think it's paraphrased from Malcolm X, that being powerless is actually more miserable, more corrupting than having power.
Yeah, that feeling of helplessness can really breed resentment, negativity. People lash out trying to get some agency back.
So the point of understanding all this isn't to become some kind of power-hungry monster.
Not at all.
It's about awareness, avoiding naivety, maybe preventing some pain, especially at work, by understanding that, egos and insecurities are always in play. Have you ever been totally blindsided by someone at work?
Oh, definitely. And looking back, understanding these dynamics might have helped make sense of it or even anticipate it.
It gives you a more realistic lens on how people operate, helps you navigate things, protect yourself maybe.
Exactly. Less likely to be taken advantage of.
Okay, let's shift to appearances. This is interesting. Greene says, look, we're social animals, evolved from primates. How we present ourselves matters. Clothes, voice tone, body language.
It's primal. Our brains are wired for those instant judgments based on visual cues, sound cues.
Totally. But here's the catch. He warns about confusing the role you play with who you really are. He mentions Richard Sennett's book, The Fall of Public Man.
Right. The idea that historically, people understood they were putting on a mask when they enter the public sphere, acting a part.
Like a performance.
Yeah. And Sennett argued that we've lost that distance now. The lines blur between public and private.
And that leads to neuroses. Anxiety.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
A loss of that distinct self.
The 50 Cent example he gives is fascinating. Greene saw him consciously put on a persona.
Right. A very specific, formidable image in public.
But he wasn't defined by it. Greene saw a different person behind the scenes. It really shows that performance aspect.
It highlights how a persona can be a tool, a strategy, as long as you know who you are underneath it. Don't get trapped by the image.
But there's a potential downside for your own happiness.
Right.
Always keeping up an appearance. Like, if you're a presenter, always having to be cheerful, that can create a disconnect with how you actually feel inside. Have you ever felt that pressure needing to project something you weren't really feeling?
Absolutely. And it's exhausting. That tension between the external projection and the internal reality. Authenticity matters for well-being.
Okay, let's talk relationships and work. One of his more controversial laws. Never trust friends too much.
Yeah, that one gets people talking.
But he clarifies, it's about context, specifically the work world.
Right. He's saying when you're hiring or partnering up in business, you have to prioritize results, competence, over just the fact that you're friends.
Because loyalty can cloud your judgment, lead to bad decisions for the business.
Exactly. Bias creeps in easily. It might not be the best outcome.
And then the flip side, using enemies. That
Right.
sounds counterintuitive.
It does. But his point is that approaching someone who was maybe an adversary, bringing them over to your side, that can create intense motivation and loyalty.
Why would that be?
Well, think about cognitive dissonance. If someone acts against their previous stance, they often adjust their beliefs to match their actions. So, someone who opposed you might become a fierce supporter to justify switching sides. It's a psychological thing.
Interesting. Okay, another tricky one. Conceal your intentions.
Again, context matters hugely here.
He's not saying be secretive with everyone all the time.
No. He says share your vision with your team, inspire them. But in competitive situations, business negotiations, rivalries, then yes, secrecy, maybe even misdirection.
Like a red herring.
Yeah, throwing competitors off the scent, that can be a valid strategy. It's about strategic communication, knowing when to be open, when to hold back.
Right. All this talk about power games and manipulation, it can start to feel a bit, I don't know, dark, cynical.
I get that.
Right.
But Greene really pushes back on the idea that anyone is purely innocent.
Meaning everyone plays these games to some extent. Everyone has a dark side.
That's fundamental to his view of human nature. He doesn't see people as purely good or bad, but capable of a whole range of behaviors, depending on the situation, their motives.
He even looks at figures like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., through this lens.
Yeah, not to diminish their incredible achievements at all,
No, of course not.
but to highlight the strategic element in their nonviolence. It wasn't just idealism, it was calculated. They understood how to influence public opinion, how to provoke reactions.
Like the Salt March, or involving children in marches. Those were strategic choices.
Exactly. Showing that even leaders focused on positive change are often smart strategists who understand human behavior.
And Greene argues that deep down, despite, smartphones and everything, those raw emotions are still there. Envy, aggression, status, anxiety.
They persist. They're part of our evolutionary baggage, still shaping how we interact, often unconsciously.
Which leads to this concept of the shadow. Acknowledging your own less desirable bits. The narcissism, the irrationality, the aggression.
That's the first step to controlling them, he argues. Becoming a healthy narcissist, as he puts it. He even links narcissism back to childhood, how self-esteem develops.
So it's about integration, not denial, bringing those shadow parts into awareness.
Yes. Psychology talks about this a lot. Acknowledging and working with those parts leads to more self-awareness, more maturity.
And he even suggests using that dark side positively, like channeling anger into getting something done, or using intense feelings for art.
Right. Reframing those difficult emotions, their energy. Direct that energy constructively instead of letting it run wild.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit to something maybe a little more alluring. The art of seduction.
Ah, yes.
Greene sees this as another form of power, influencing people, but by creating pleasure, lowering their defenses.
It's subtle, often indirect, appealing to desires, emotions.
He talks about cold versus warm seducers, and he leans towards the warm approach.
Definitely. He emphasizes a back-and-forth dynamic, mutual engagement, not just domination.
What's the difference in intent?
Well, warm seduction is more about connection, mutual enjoyment. Cold seduction is more manipulative, focused solely on getting what you want.
So what makes someone a great seducer, in the warm sense?
Being outer-directed, really focusing on the other person.
Not just thinking about yourself.
Exactly. Genuinely listening, understanding their needs, reflecting that back to them, being attentive, making them feel seen, understood.
That takes empathy, curiosity.
A lot of it.
And the opposite, the anti-seducer. What are the turnoffs?
Oh, being preachy, moralizing, lacking generosity of spirit.
And generosity isn't just about money, right?
No, it's time, energy, attention too. Those anti-seductive traits just push people away, create distance.
He also makes a really interesting distinction between vulnerability and insecurity.
Yes, this is crucial.
Vulnerability being open, maybe admitting you need help that can be attractive, seductive even.
Because it fosters connection. It lets the other person feel needed, valued.
But insecurity being totally self-absorbed, needy, in a draining way that's anti-seductive.
Big time. It just sucks the energy out of the room. Seduction, he says, is the opposite of being defensive. It's about openness.
Okay, this ties right into dating, especially today. Greene says love, romance. They take effort.
Conscious effort. He compares it to animal mating rituals, often quite elaborate.
Right, and the worst thing is seeming like you're putting in zero effort.
Because it signals you don't care or you don't value the other person.
He tells that story about his friend's date. The guy used the discount code.
Yeah, and it wasn't really about saving a few bucks.
No, it was the symbolism, that lack of generosity, thoughtfulness. Have you ever seen something small like that just totally change your perception of someone?
Oh, absolutely. Those little things can speak volumes about character.
He also touches on challenges for young men today, maybe unrealistic expectations from internet porn, and the absolute need for real-world interaction to build social skills. Like reading body language. Our mirror neurons help with that.
They do. You just can't learn those subtle social cues online. Face-to-face is essential for emotional intelligence.
And needing patience, resilience, learning to handle rejection.
Crucial life skills, especially in dating.
And ultimately, what's really seductive, he points to relaxation, genuine confidence, like Errol Flynn's effortless charm.
That inner ease, that self-assurance. It's magnetic.
So how do you get that confidence? He's pretty clear. Just faking it doesn't really fly.
No. People can usually see through bravado. Your body language gives you away.
Real confidence, he says, comes from accomplishment.
Exactly. Building skills, achieving things, having that track record, which, okay, can be tough when you're young and just starting out. What would you tell someone in that position?
Yeah, good question. I think it's about focusing on competence. Small steps. Set achievable goals in something. Get good at it. Celebrate those wins. It builds gradually.
It's a process, not an overnight switch.
And he links it back to mastery, developing skills that make you stand out. And importantly, he says looks and money aren't the main thing in seduction.
Right. It's more about psychology, how you carry yourself, your self-carriage.
That's empowering, isn't it? It puts the focus on things you can develop, not just things you were born with or inherited.
Totally. Internal qualities, learned skills.
Okay, let's talk more about body language then.
Yeah.
He really emphasizes its importance. Deep evolutionary roots.
Predates spoken language, essential for survival, group dynamics. Kids are naturals at reading it.
And our nonverbal signals often tell the real story,
Right.
even if our words are saying something different.
The body doesn't lie as easily as words do.
He gives some great examples. Like spotting a fake smile, you got to look at the eyes.
The Duchenne smile, yeah. Uses the eye muscles.
Or how your voice tone reveals nerves or confidence.
Yeah.
Posture and hierarchies, the whole pecking order thing.
Even which way your feet are pointing can show if you're truly engaged or looking for an escape route. Have you ever consciously noticed someone's feet giving them away?
Huh? I'll be looking now. It's amazing how much information is there if you pay attention.
It really is. He mentions Milton Erickson, the hypnotist.
Right, who became incredibly skilled at reading body language because he was paralyzed.
Exactly. Forced to rely only on visual cues, he honed that skill to an amazing degree. Shows the power of nonverbals.
But ultimately, Greene isn't saying you should constantly micromanage your gestures.
No, that would be exhausting and probably look unnatural.
It's more about cultivating that inner confidence first.
Right. If you feel genuinely secure, your body language will tend to reflect that naturally. It becomes more authentic.
And maybe focus more on learning to read other people's body language through observation.
That's a huge part of it. Observation and practice improve that skill immensely.
Which leads us perfectly into mastery. That was the focus of his book, Mastery. Why did he write that?
He was concerned. Concerned about seeing deep skills devalued. Seeing people neglect the brain's amazing capacity for learning.
Because of instant gratification. Everything quick and easy.
Pretty much. He saw a disconnect between the quick hits from technology and the deep satisfaction that comes from real effort, developing true expertise.
He talks about the neuroscience, right? Building neural pathways, repetition.
Yeah, the whole 10,000 hours idea, maybe not the exact number, but the concept of deep, sustained practice.
You're literally wiring your brain.
Exactly. And he contrasts that with how the internet, while amazing for info access, can actually hinder mastery because it encourages jumping around, shallow engagement. Think of it like building brain muscle needs consistent workouts.
Makes sense. It's not just about knowing facts, it's about deeply embedding skills.
Right. Active engagement, application over time.
And mastery links back to power and seduction how?
Well, developing real skill builds genuine self-esteem, genuine confidence.
Which makes you more influential. More attractive.
Naturally, competence breeds confidence, and confidence enhances your ability to connect and influence.
Okay, so finding your path to mastery. He distinguishes passion from your life task. What's the difference?
Passion can be fleeting, he argues. That initial excitement isn't enough.
It needs more.
It needs time, serious effort, pushing through boredom, tedium even. The real thrill, he says, comes after you've put in that hard work. Does that ring true for you, learning something difficult?
Oh, definitely. The initial fun wears off, then there's the grind, and then maybe you hit that satisfying flow state or see real progress.
That's it. Passion needs perseverance to become mastery.
So how do you find that life task? He talks about a natural connection.
Yeah, feeling it inside, like it just fits you. He mentions Howard Gardner's multiple intelligences. Maybe you have a natural feel for numbers or words or music.
Find where your natural inclinations lie.
That's the starting point, finding a path that aligns with who you are.
And he really emphasizes the 20s as a key time for this.
Yeah, dedicating that period to learning skills that fit you. Knowing your life task gives you direction, helps you push through the tough parts.
It's foundational.
Hugely. And during that learning phase, that apprenticeship, prioritize learning opportunities over just the paycheck.
Seek responsibility, growth potential, even if it's a smaller place.
Exactly. Hands-on experience, real responsibility. That's where the deep learning happens early on.
And while you're in that apprenticeship, practice deep observation.
Soak it all in. The unspoken rules, the conventions, the skills. Watch successful people, find role models.
Learn by watching and absorbing.
Both explicitly and implicitly, yeah. Pick up the strategies.
And finally, learning by doing. Our brains are wired for it.
Goes way back. Ancient tool-making, medieval apprenticeships, active hands-on practice is how we truly learn best. Far better than just passively reading or listening.
Okay, so this whole journey of exploring power mastery, it took a really dramatic turn for Greene himself in 2018.
Yeah, he suffered a stroke.
A terrifying experience, he describes it. Sudden paralysis on his left side, losing things he loved, like swimming, biking, hiking.
Things that were a big part of his identity and routine, that loss of physical autonomy,
Yeah.
it's profound.
And the emotional toll. The frustration of having to relearn basic things later in life. Realizing how much you just assume your body will work. Have you ever had a moment like that, where you suddenly appreciate something you took for granted?
It really hits home, doesn't it? That reminder of fragility, the value of simple abilities.
And the cause was unusual, a wasp sting involved.
Yeah, a strange combination, it sounds like. The sting, blood pressure meds, cholesterol release, all after being intensely exhausted. Nearly fatal, apparently. His wife's quick thinking was crucial.
Wow. Just highlights how vulnerable we can be.
Absolutely.
And that experience fundamentally shifted his view on power and vulnerability.
Deeply. He talks about gaining much more empathy for people with disabilities, people facing hardship, a visceral understanding of dependence, helplessness.
Experiencing it yourself changes everything.
It gives you a perspective you just can't get intellectually.
He mentions initially being in denial after the stroke, thinking he'd bounce back quickly.
Yeah, wanting to believe it wasn't that serious.
And then the depression hit when the long-term reality sunk in.
That delayed reaction is common after trauma. The shock wears off. The real processing begins.
So how did he cope? What helped him navigate that?
Well, continuing to write was huge. Gave him purpose.
Kept his mind engaged.
Exactly. And his long-term meditation practice over 12 years by then, that provided grounding.
Mindfulness, yeah.
And perspective.
Uh,
Consciously thinking about others facing even worse situations globally.
Maintaining that broader view.
It helps avoid getting totally consumed by your own problems.
Yeah.
In Connection, he stresses how vital his wife's support was.
Human connection is key.
Absolutely. And just learning to appreciate the little things again, the simple joys he'd lost access to.
That perspective shift seems common after major life events.
It really does.
Looking at human nature now, after all this, he says he feels more love for humanity, but not necessarily more optimism.
An interesting combination, maybe a deeper acceptance. He mentions that Zen concept, Tathagata.
Accepting things as they are.
Yeah, without judgment. Finding peace amidst the messiness.
He still worries about technology, its potential downsides.
Degradation, perversion, he calls it.
But he finds hope in younger generations, Gen Z and beyond.
Yeah, he sees a spirit of rebellion in them, a pushback against the overly virtual, unhealthy world, a longing for real, authentic experiences. He even dreams of a happier 2072.
Holding on to that hope for the future, driven by the young.
It's a belief in the potential for change, for a return to something more grounded.
Okay, finally he answers that question from the previous guest. When were you happiest in adult life, and why? Are you now?
Right. And his answer is really telling.
He points to the initial success of the 48 Laws, age 38. That moment.
Especially after the period of struggle and desperation right before it, that contrast made the success feel incredibly intense.
Like a drug high, he calls it. That radical life change. Have you ever felt that kind of sudden dramatic turnaround?
That feeling of breakthrough after hitting rock bottom, it's powerful, euphoric almost.
But that intensity fades, right?
Of course. But what replaces it now, he says, is this sustained gratitude. Deep appreciation for where he is, especially knowing how easily things could have gone differently after the stroke.
That perspective changes everything.
Yeah. He mentions having dinner with Stevie Wonder. Like pinch-me moments that remind him how far he's come. It's maybe a quieter contentment, but deep.
Wow. Well, that was quite a journey, a really profound deep dive into Robert Greene's world.
Absolutely. Power, human nature, mastery, resilience. It covers so much ground.
His willingness to tackle those uncomfortable truths really gives you a lot to think about, a framework for understanding ourselves, the world.
It really does.
So we definitely encourage you listening to chew on these ideas. How do they resonate with your own experiences, your life, how you see things?
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, building on that idea of the shadow. How might becoming more aware of your own shadow, aside those bits you maybe don't like or acknowledge, how might that awareness actually empower you? Not to act on the negative impulses, but to make more conscious, more constructive choices.
Something to ponder. Until our next deep dive.